The soft hum of medical equipment filled the night shift at Celestial Medical Station as Dr. Thomas Reed reviewed his patient charts. The station's artificial day cycle was transitioning to evening, casting a warm amber glow through the viewport that overlooked the swirling nebula beyond. He sipped his third cup of synthesized coffee, enjoying the quiet moment before his rounds. The tranquility shattered as the emergency bay doors slid open with a pressurized hiss. A tall figure stumbled through, supported by two anxious-looking transport workers. Thomas's trained eye immediately noticed the distinctive silver-scaled armor of a Kralaxian elite guard, though it was now marred by an unusual prismatic residue. The other medical centers rejected her. One of the transport workers explained hurriedly, helping the Kralaxian onto a diagnostic bed. Said they couldn't risk treating a royal guard without proper authorization. Thomas approached, medical scanner already in hand. "I'm Dr. Reed. Can you tell me your name?" The Kralaxian's silver eyes fixed on him, pupils contracting against the medical bay's bright lights. "Zara," she managed, her translator making her voice sound melodious despite her obvious pain. "Third shield of the royal house." Running the scanner over her injuries, Thomas frowned at the readings. The prismatic residue was releasing microscopic particles that seemed to react specifically with Kralaxian biology. Her vital signs showed an unusual pattern he'd never seen before. A combination of elevated neural activity and decreased cellular regeneration. "These readings are fascinating," he murmured, more to himself than to his patient. "The compound is acting as a selective inhibitor, but it's not matching any known toxin profiles in our database." Zara watched him with increasing interest as he worked, her rigid posture gradually relaxing. "You are different from the others," she observed. "They saw my uniform and stepped away. You step closer." Thomas smiled as he prepared a broad-spectrum detoxification field. Human medical training is pretty strict about one thing. We treat the patient in front of us, regardless of who they are, or where they're from. Now I'm going to set up a containment field to prevent this substance from spreading further. Can you tell me when this started? As he worked, Zara described a diplomatic event on a nearby station. Her symptoms had begun shortly after she'd intercepted a suspicious package meant for the royal delegation. Thomas noticed how she chose her words carefully, revealing enough for medical necessity while maintaining professional discretion. "The interesting thing," Thomas said, studying a molecular breakdown of the residue, "is how specifically this targets Kralaxian physiology. But that's actually good news for both of us." He adjusted the settings on his medical equipment. "Being human means I can handle it safely, and being a doctor means I know how to help." The emergency bay's advanced systems hummed to life as Thomas initialized the treatment sequence. A soft blue field enveloped Zora, beginning the process of neutralizing the unknown compound. He noticed something else in the readings. Traces of an unprecedented molecular structure that suggested this was no ordinary toxin. "You should start feeling some relief soon," Thomas assured her, noting with satisfaction that her vital signs were already stabilizing. "But I'd like to keep you under observation. This substance, it's like nothing I've seen before. Professionally speaking, it's quite remarkable." Zora's expression shifted subtly. The Kralaxian equivalent of raised eyebrows. Remarkable enough to ignore the risk of treating a royal guard without clearance. Thomas checked another set of readings before answering. "In my experience, the most interesting medical cases often come with interesting stories. Stories that sometimes need a doctor who knows when to focus on healing first and ask questions later." A ghost of a smile crossed Zora's features as her pain visibly decreased. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "that is exactly why I chose this station." Thomas nodded, already preparing the next phase of treatment. He had a feeling this was going to be more than just another night shift at Celestial Medical Station. The medical bay's night cycle brought a different kind of quiet as Thomas studied the molecular diagrams floating in the holographic display. He'd spent the past 6 hours analyzing the mysterious compound affecting his patient, and each new discovery raised more questions than answers. "Your dedication is unexpected," Zara observed from her bed, where the containment field continued its work. The prismatic residue had faded, but the underlying damage to her cellular structure remained complex. Thomas rotated the three-dimensional model of the toxin's molecular structure. "This is precision engineering at a level I've rarely seen. Someone designed this specifically to target Kralaxian biology while leaving other species unaffected." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "That kind of knowledge requires inside access to Kralaxian medical data." Zara's silver eyes narrowed slightly. "You understand why the other facilities refused treatment now." "I understand they were afraid," Thomas replied, adjusting the treatment parameters. "But that's not how medicine should work. Fear shouldn't dictate who receives care." He pulled up another set of readings. "Though I admit, I'm curious how you knew to seek out a human doctor specifically." The elite guard was silent for a moment, her scaled armor shifting with each careful breath. "The Royal House maintains extensive files on all known species. Humans are unique in your biochemical adaptability. When I recognized the toxin's signature, I calculated that a human physician would be my best chance." Thomas nodded, impressed by her tactical thinking, even when injured. "The compound's molecular structure is similar to something we'd consider a protein inhibitor on Earth, but it's been modified extensively." He brought up a comparative analysis. "See these binding sites? They're engineered to interact specifically with Kralaxian neural pathways. But human nervous system proteins are different enough that we can handle it safely." "You speak of biological warfare as if discussing an interesting research paper," Zara noted, a hint of amusement in her translated voice. "Professional hazard," Thomas smiled, preparing another round of treatment. "The more we understand how something works, the better we can counter it. And this particular something," he highlighted a section of the molecular model. "It's elegant, really. Whoever designed it had access to both advanced Kralaxian medical data and human biochemical research." Zara's expression shifted to what Thomas had learned to recognize as concern. "The implications are troubling. Few have access to such combined knowledge." As Thomas administered the new treatment protocol, he noticed subtle changes in Zara's cellular readings. The toxin's degradation pattern was revealing new information about its origin. "There's something else," he said, enhancing the display. "These molecular markers, they're similar to research coming out of the Centauri Medical Institute. I did a rotation there during my residency." The elite guard's posture tensed almost imperceptibly. "The Institute recently established a partnership with the Royal Medical Academy. They have been developing joint treatment protocols for cross-species care." "Or perhaps something else," Thomas suggested quietly, watching the new treatment begin to take effect. "The good news is, understanding where it came from helps us break it down. This next phase should start repairing the cellular damage." Zara studied him with newfound intensity. "You continue treatment despite knowing the political implications." Thomas checked her latest readings before responding. "I took an oath to heal. Politics, palace intrigue, even potential danger. None of that changes the fact that right now, you're my patient." He adjusted the containment field's frequency. "Though I suspect there's much more to this story that I should know." "Yes," Zara agreed, settling back as the treatment eased more of her discomfort. And given your involvement now, you deserve to understand the full scope of what you've become part of. She paused, choosing her next words with careful precision. Tell me, Dr. Reed, what do you know about the Kralaxian succession crisis? The warning came through Dr. Thomas Reed's personal medical channel at 300 station time. A request for his patient's medical records, marked with high-level clearance codes that seemed just slightly off. Thomas had spent enough time verifying medical credentials to recognize the subtle signs of forgery. "We need to move," he announced, already gathering essential supplies. The medical bay's soft blue lighting reflected off Zara's silver scales as she rose from the treatment bed with fluid grace, despite her ongoing recovery. "My research vessel is docked in Bay 7. "Your personal vessel?" Zara questioned, helping him collect specific treatment modules. Her movements were precise despite her condition, speaking to years of elite training. Thomas quickly transferred his latest treatment protocols to a portable unit. Modified it for medical research. It's not exactly a hospital ship, but it has better equipment than most emergency response vehicles. He paused to check the station's security feeds. More importantly, it's registered under my research credentials, not the station's medical system. The corridor to Bay 7 curved around the station's outer ring, offering breathtaking views of the nebula outside. They moved quickly but calmly, appearing to any observers as simply a doctor accompanying a patient during normal rounds. Thomas had learned long ago that confidence was often the best camouflage in a medical setting. 3 vessels requested emergency docking clearance in the past hour, Zara noted quietly as they walked. Response times far below standard protocol. Thomas nodded, impressed by her situational awareness, even while injured. The station's security systems are excellent at stopping obvious threats. But if someone has legitimate-looking medical credentials, they appear as simple emergency response teams, Zara finished. An elegant approach. They reached Bay 7 without incident. Thomas's research vessel, the Stargazer, wasn't impressive by military standards, but its unassuming appearance was precisely what they needed. The ship's exterior bore the standard markings of a medical research vessel, complete with the universal symbols for scientific exploration. As they boarded, Thomas immediately began activating his modified medical systems. The main cabin is set up as a treatment room. Not exactly standard design, but I've found it useful for my research into deep space medical conditions. The ship's interior revealed carefully organized medical equipment, much of it customized for specialized care. Sarah surveyed the setup with professional interest. "You've prioritized functionality over comfort." Practical. She moved to help him secure equipment for launch, but Thomas gestured for her to sit. "Your cellular regeneration is still in a critical phase," he explained, running a quick diagnostic scan. "The next few hours are crucial for the treatment to stabilize." He began entering launch sequences while simultaneously preparing the next round of medical procedures. Besides, I've had plenty of practice launching solo. The station's docking clamps released with a gentle shudder. Through the viewport, Thomas could see another ship approaching the medical station, its design suggesting advanced scanning capabilities disguised as medical equipment. They had moved just in time. As they cleared the station's immediate space, Thomas engaged the quantum drive. The nebula's swirling colors stretched and blurred around them as they accelerated to faster-than-light travel. "I'm setting course for the Adriana Research Outpost," he explained, checking Zara's vital signs on his portable scanner. Small enough to avoid attention, but equipped well enough to continue your treatment. An outpost specializing in xenobiology research would be an obvious destination, Zara observed, her tactical mind clearly active despite her condition. "Our pursuers will anticipate this." Thomas smiled as he made a minor course adjustment. That's why we're not actually going there. The course is a mask for our real destination. He pulled up a star chart, highlighting a small point of light. There's a private medical research facility in the Nomeri Belt. No official connection to any government or corporation. Perfect for treating a patient who needs to stay off the official medical grid. Zara's expression showed subtle approval. You have experience with discrete medical operations. Let's just say you're not the first patient who's needed treatment away from prying eyes. Thomas replied, initiating the next phase of her treatment. Though you might be the most interesting. Now, while we're en route, perhaps you can tell me more about why someone would go to such lengths to create a toxin specifically designed to target Kralaxian royal guards. The Stargazer's medical bay hummed with quiet efficiency as Thomas reviewed the latest tissue regeneration data. They were 12 hours into their journey, and Zara's recovery was progressing in ways that challenged everything he knew about Kralaxian physiology. Your healing rate is remarkable, he noted, adjusting the holographic display to highlight a particular cluster of cells. Most species would take weeks to achieve this level of restoration, even with advanced treatment. Zara observed the display with keen interest. The Royal Guard undergoes extensive genetic enhancement. Rapid healing is essential for our duties. She paused, watching as Thomas fine-tuned the treatment protocols. Though I must admit, your methods are accelerating the process beyond our normal capabilities. Thomas brought up a comparison chart. It's fascinating, really. Your enhanced healing would typically reject external medical intervention. But by synchronizing the treatment frequency with your natural regeneration cycle, he highlighted a wave pattern in the data. We're working with your biology instead of against it. This approach, Zara said thoughtfully, it contradicts traditional Kralaxian medical doctrine. We are taught that healing must come from within, that external assistance weakens the warrior's spirit. A small smile crossed Thomas's face as he prepared the next treatment phase. And yet here you are, getting stronger by the hour with a little help from modern medicine. Sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is accept help when it's needed. The medical bay's soft lighting cast gentle shadows as Zara considered his words. In the Royal Guard, we have a saying, strength flows from purity of purpose. I always understood it to mean reliance only on oneself. She watched as Thomas adjusted the tissue regenerator. Perhaps we have interpreted it too narrowly. Human medical history is full of similar debates, Thomas replied, checking a series of readings. For centuries, some cultures viewed accepting medical help as a sign of weakness. But we learned that combining traditional healing wisdom with modern science often produces the best results. A slight tremor passed through the ship as they navigated a gravitational eddy. Thomas steadied a floating medical tray while maintaining the precise calibration of his instruments. The movement seemed to trigger a thought in Zara. You handle your vessel with unusual skill for a medical researcher, she observed. Your adaptability extends beyond medicine. Thomas chuckled softly. Frontier medicine teaches you to wear many hats. Sometimes you're a doctor, sometimes a pilot, sometimes an engineer. He adjusted their course slightly. Out here, rigid specialization can be a liability. Another contrast to Kralaxian philosophy, Zara noted. We believe in perfecting a single role, becoming its purest expression. She flexed her hand, testing the progress of her healing. Yet I cannot deny the effectiveness of your versatile approach. The medical scanner chimed, drawing their attention to a new set of results. Thomas studied the data with growing excitement. Look at this pattern in your neural pathways. The toxin was designed to exploit the rigid structure of Kralaxian neural enhancement. But by introducing controlled variability in the treatment, He highlighted a series of successful cellular adaptations. "You turned our perceived strength into a vulnerability," Zara completed the thought, her silver eyes showing new understanding. "Just as our attackers turned our healing enhancement against us." Thomas nodded, already incorporating the insight into his treatment plan. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most powerful or the most pure. Sometimes it's about being flexible, about finding unexpected connections. He brought up a new treatment protocol on the display. "Speaking of connections, I've been meaning to ask about something in your blood work. These marker patterns, they're typically associated with the Kralaxian royal bloodline." Zara's posture shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly. "You continue to prove remarkably observant, Dr. Reed." She met his gaze directly. "Perhaps it is time I explained why the succession crisis threatens more than just the royal house's political stability." Thomas stood before his research terminal, surrounded by floating holographic displays of molecular structures. 3 days into their journey, and sleep had become a distant memory, replaced by cups of synthetic coffee and the burning desire to solve this medical puzzle. "The answer has to be here," he muttered, rotating a 3-dimensional model of the toxin's core structure. Something about its configuration tugged at his memory, a pattern he'd seen before but couldn't quite place. Zara approached silently, her movements now almost fully restored. "You have barely rested since we left the station," she observed, studying the displays with equal intensity. "Even Royal Guard training acknowledges the importance of sleep cycles." I know, Thomas replied, enlarging a particular molecular chain. "But this structure, it's familiar. Not just the Kralaxian elements, but something else. Something I've seen in my research before." He pulled up his personal database, decades of medical research notes collected from across human space. The familiar interface responded to his gestures, bringing up study after study. Then he saw it, a small paper from his early research days, studying medicinal plants from Earth's rainforests. That's it. His fingers flew across the console, overlaying the molecular patterns. "Look at this. The toxin's base structure. It's almost identical to a rare compound found in an earth plant, the azure serpent orchid. We studied it for its unique protein-binding properties." Zara leaned closer, her silver eyes reflecting the holographic data. How could Earth botanical compounds be incorporated into a Kralaxian bioweapon? Thomas's excitement grew as more pieces fell into place. The Centauri Medical Institute, they weren't just developing cross-species treatments. They were studying how different species' biological compounds interact. He brought up another display. Someone took this research and weaponized it, combining earth plant toxins with Kralaxian bioengineering. Creating a weapon that could specifically target enhanced Kralaxian biology, Zara concluded, her voice tight with controlled anger, while appearing to be a natural reaction to human medical compounds. Perfect for discrediting any human Kralaxian medical cooperation, Thomas added, already calculating potential treatment approaches. But they made one crucial mistake. By using Earth-based compounds as the foundation, a human doctor would be uniquely qualified to recognize and treat it, Zara finished, showing a flash of what Thomas now recognized as royal pride. They never expected the Royal Guard to seek help outside our own medical facilities. Thomas began modifying his treatment protocols based on the new information. The azure serpent orchid's toxins can be neutralized by a specific protein sequence. If we can synthesize a Kralaxian-compatible version. His hands moved rapidly over the controls, combining his botanical knowledge with what he'd learned about Kralaxian biology. The ship's medical synthesizer hummed to life, beginning to produce the modified antidote. Thomas watched the first drops form, glowing with a gentle blue luminescence. This should not only neutralize the remaining toxin, but help your enhanced healing factor recover its full potential. As he prepared to administer the treatment, Zara caught his wrist gently. You understand that this discovery proves the conspiracy reaches into the highest levels of both human and Kralaxian medical institutions. Thomas met her gaze steadily. I became involved the moment you walked into my medical bay. Finding the truth about this toxin isn't just about saving one patient anymore. It's about protecting future cooperation between our species. He prepared the injection. Besides, I've already broken about a dozen regulations by treating you without proper authorization. Might as well add exposing a conspiracy to the list. A rare smile crossed Zara's features. The royal house chose well in sending me to the station where you served, Dr. Reed. She extended her arm for the injection, though I suspect they did not anticipate quite how thoroughly you would become entangled in our affairs. As Thomas administered the antidote, the ship's sensors chimed with an incoming transmission. The screen displayed a heavily encrypted signal originating from the Kralaxian Royal Palace itself. The Kralaxian Royal Palace's medical conference center gleamed with crystalline architecture, its towering spires catching the light of twin suns. Thomas adjusted his formal medical robes, trying to appear as natural as possible among the gathered xenobiologists and research physicians from across the galaxy. Your credentials are perfect. Zara's voice came through his subtle earpiece, her tone carrying the barest hint of amusement. Though I never expected to see a human doctor listed as an expert in Kralaxian cellular regeneration. Thomas maintained his professional smile as he navigated through the crowd. Amazing what you can learn treating a single patient, he murmured, nodding to a passing Centaurian researcher. The conference badge on his chest displayed his temporary credentials as a visiting specialist, crafted from Zara's intricate knowledge of palace protocols. The main presentation hall buzzed with activity as various species discussed the latest advances in medical technology. Thomas made his way to the research terminal he'd been assigned, perfectly positioned to access the palace's medical database. The head of the Royal Medical Academy is approaching, Zara warned. Second table to your left. She'll expect you to be familiar with the latest published research. Thomas pulled up his prepared data displays just as an elegant Kralaxian in formal medical robes approached. Dr. Reed, she greeted him, her translator conveying perfectly modulated tones. Your paper on adaptive cellular responses in enhanced biology was intriguing. Thank you, Director Van, Thomas replied, highlighting specific data points in his display. Though I must credit my recent work with the Centauri Institute for some key insights. He watched carefully for her reaction to the mention. A subtle shift in her posture told him volumes. Ah yes, the Institute's research has been invaluable to our understanding of cross-species medical applications. She studied his data with perhaps too much intensity, though some of their more experimental approaches have raised concerns. Thomas adjusted his display to show a particular molecular structure. Speaking of experimental approaches, I've been particularly interested in their work with Earth-based botanical compounds. The protein-binding properties show remarkable similarities to certain Kralaxian cellular mechanisms. Director Ven's silver eyes narrowed slightly. A fascinating observation, though perhaps such comparisons are better discussed in more private settings. My thoughts exactly, Thomas agreed, sending a subtle signal through his medical terminal. In fact, I have some additional data you might find interesting. He brought up a new display, one that clearly showed the weaponized toxin structure alongside its Earth-based components. The director's composure slipped for just a moment. This is highly classified research. How did you? Obtain molecular samples from a toxin, specifically designed to target Kralaxian-enhanced biology, while appearing to be a natural reaction to human medical compounds. Thomas completed her thought. Let's just say I recently had a very interesting patient. The conference hall's doors opened silently as royal guards took up strategic positions. Zara's voice came through his earpiece once more. Security systems are locked down. Medical database is secured. Well done, Dr. Reed. Director Ven's gaze darted between the approaching guards and Thomas's calm expression. You have no idea what forces you're interfering with, she hissed quietly. Actually, Thomas replied, keeping his voice professional and steady. I understand perfectly. You used my people's medical research to create a weapon. You tried to sabotage cooperation between our species. And worst of all, he added as Zara emerged from the shadows in full Royal Guard regalia, you tried to kill my patient. The conference hall fell silent as Zara approached, her presence commanding immediate attention. The other delegates backed away, creating a clear space around Thomas's terminal. Director Ven, Zara announced formally, her voice carrying across the hushed room. By order of the royal house, you are here be detained for questioning regarding acts of treason against the crown. She turned to Thomas with a slight nod. Dr. Reed, I believe you have evidence to present to the Royal Medical Council. Thomas began transferring his data to the main conference displays. I think it's time we showed everyone exactly how human and Kralaxian medicine can work together, both for healing and for uncovering the truth. The Royal Medical Council chamber radiated ancient dignity, its crystalline walls inscribed with a complete medical history of the Kralaxian people. Thomas stood before the assembled council members, his medical data displays floating in the air around him like luminous butterflies. Honorable Council, he began, his voice clear in the perfect acoustics of the chamber. What I'm about to present isn't just evidence of a crime. It's proof of how much we can achieve when we combine our knowledge instead of using it against each other. The head counselor, her scales shimmering with age and wisdom, gestured for him to proceed. Beside her sat the Kralaxian king himself, his presence lending unprecedented weight to the proceedings. Thomas brought up the first display. This is the molecular structure of the azure serpent orchid toxin, a compound found only on Earth. He merged it with another display. And this is how it was modified using Kralaxian bioengineering techniques. The combination created something that should have been impossible. A weapon that could specifically target enhanced Kralaxian biology while appearing to be a natural reaction to human medical compounds. Murmurs rippled through the council as Thomas continued. But the truly remarkable thing isn't the weapon itself. It's what it taught us about how our different biologies can interact. He highlighted specific molecular chains. These binding sites reveal patterns we've never seen before. By understanding how they were weaponized, we've actually discovered new possibilities for healing. Zara stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. Dr. Reed's treatment not only saved my life, but accelerated my recovery beyond our standard protocols. His understanding of Earth botanicals, combined with respectful study of our biology, achieved what neither of our medical traditions could do alone. Thomas nodded, bringing up new data. The evidence trail shows that Director Ven and her conspirators didn't just steal research. They actively worked to prevent discoveries like this from coming to light. He displayed communication records and research logs. They feared what true cooperation between our species might reveal. The king leaned forward, his voice resonating with authority. And what has your cooperation revealed, Dr. Reed? That we're stronger together than apart, Thomas replied, showing the successful treatment data from his time with Zara. Every difference between our species that they tried to exploit became an advantage when we worked together. Human adaptability complemented Kralaxian precision. Earth's biological diversity enhanced your advanced biotechnology. He brought up the final display, a complete model of the new treatment protocol he developed. This isn't just a cure for their weapon. It's a foundation for entirely new medical treatments, techniques that could benefit both our peoples. The head counselor studied the data intently. You propose that this conspiracy, in trying to drive our species apart, has inadvertently proven the value of bringing us together. Exactly, Thomas confirmed. They were so focused on exploiting our differences that they never considered how those very differences could create something greater than the sum of its parts. He glanced at Zara. Sometimes the best discoveries come from unexpected partnerships. The king rose, his decision clearly made. Dr. Reed, your evidence has exposed a plot against the crown and opened new possibilities for our people. He turned to address the council. The conspirators will face justice, but more importantly, their actions have shown us a path forward. One where human and Kralaxian medicine evolve together. Zara stepped closer to Thomas, her voice carrying pride. The Royal Guard has always trained to protect our people from external threats. But today, we've learned that true protection can come from reaching out, rather than standing apart. The head counselor raised her hand, drawing attention. There is wisdom in these words. Perhaps it is time for the Royal Medical Academy to embrace new perspectives. She fixed Thomas with a penetrating gaze. Dr. Reed, would you be willing to help establish a new division of cooperative medical research? Thomas smiled, thinking of all the possibilities ahead. I can't think of a better way to ensure that healing triumphs over division. He caught Zara's subtle nod of approval. Though I hope this position includes a proper security detail. I have a feeling some people won't be happy about these changes. 6 months after the conspiracy's exposure, the newly established Cooperative Medical Research Center rose like a beacon of hope above the Kralaxian capital. Its unique architecture blended human and Kralaxian design philosophies, much like the work conducted within its walls. Thomas stood in his office, reviewing patient data on the holographic displays, while the twin suns sat behind the crystalline spires. The center had already made remarkable progress, with 3 new treatment protocols approved for cross-species use. Still working late, Dr. Reed? Zara's familiar voice carried a note of amusement as she entered. She wore the new insignia of the Medical Security Division, a position created specifically to bridge the gap between the Royal Guard and the medical research teams. Just finishing up the results from the cellular regeneration trials, Thomas replied, highlighting a particularly promising data set. The combination of Kralaxian enhancement techniques with Earth-based botanical compounds is showing amazing potential. We're seeing healing rates that neither species thought possible. Zara moved to study the displays, her movements carrying the same fluid grace that first caught Thomas's attention in his medical bay all those months ago. The Royal House is pleased with our progress. Several other species have requested to join the research initiative. I saw the applications, Thomas nodded, bringing up a new display. The Centaurians are particularly interested in our work with protein synthesis. Ironic, considering how this all started. From weapon to healing, Zara observed, her silver eyes reflecting the holographic data, much like our own journey. She paused, considering her next words carefully. The king has asked me to inform you that you're being granted full citizenship rights. The first human to receive such an honor. Thomas looked up in surprise. That's unexpected. Though I suppose treating a royal guard, exposing a conspiracy, and revolutionizing interspecies medicine looks good on the application. You forgot surviving multiple assassination attempts, Zara added dryly. The last one was particularly creative. I never expected anyone to weaponize healing nanites. Good thing you were there to notice the irregular power fluctuations. Thomas smiled, remembering how her quick thinking had saved both their lives. We make a good team, you know. Your protective instincts, my medical knowledge. Indeed, Zara agreed, her expression softening slightly. Which is why I've recommended you for another position as well. The Royal Medical Academy is establishing an emergency response unit, combining medical expertise with security training. They need someone who understands both aspects. Thomas gestured at the displays around them. And here I thought running this research center was keeping me busy enough. Consider it a chance to train others in what we've learned, Zara suggested. After all, the best way to ensure lasting change is to pass on our knowledge. The office door chimed as a young Kralaxian medical student entered, carrying a data crystal. Dr. Reed, the results from the botanical integration trials. She stopped short upon seeing Zara, offering a formal bow. At ease, Kira, Zara said kindly. How are your combat medical training sessions progressing? The student straightened, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Very well. Dr. Reed's techniques for maintaining steady hands under pressure have improved my emergency response capabilities by 37%. Thomas accepted the data crystal with an encouraging smile. Kira's one of our best students. She's already developing some fascinating theories about adapting Royal Guard enhancement protocols for civilian medical use. The future of our work, Zara noted with approval. Perhaps she'll be running this center one day. One day, Thomas agreed, then turned back to his student. Kira, why don't you join us? We were just about to review the latest trial results, and I think you'll find the cellular response patterns particularly interesting. As they gathered around the displays, Thomas couldn't help but feel proud of what they'd accomplished. From a chance encounter in a medical bay to a revolution in interspecies medicine, their story had become a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. The twin suns finally set, bathing the research center in twilight colors. But inside, the work continued, as human ingenuity and Kralaxian precision worked together to forge a future where healing knew no boundaries.